that.
Yeah.
And what is the slide that we're looking at right now?
So this is not based on a deep statistical analysis, but it's based on my experience. That instead of just 2 flavors of ENFJ, let's talk about 4 flavors of ENFJ. And these are the 4 common patterns that I see. And not every ENFJ will be, exactly this. Many of them will be a blend of 2 things. But these 4 are the ones that are the most common. And at the far right, that's sort of the extreme creative example. The one that's more like INFJ or ENFP, more creative, more flexible, it has that brainstorm pattern. Then we go, moving from right to left, the next one where you see in the front, or the top of the circle, they're called frontal bias. In neuroscience in general, they consider that somebody is likely to be more extroverted, although not necessarily. I actually like the word, the Victor's word, or English translation, dominant, because an INTP could be like this, or ISTJ. If it's an introvert, usually they have experience as a manager or as some kind of leadership position, so they gained this. Whereas young people, especially young ENFJ, ENTJ, ESTJ, might have this even when they're 20 years old. And this is activity more at the front of the brain. It's more extroverted. Everything is worked out. The person has a very quick responses. But we don't see a lot of reflection or integration going on. Maybe they do that in their very private time, but the emphasis is on this very rapid executive style, the corporate executive style. Then moving further left, they call even field. So you see like this. That's more common with types like ESFP and ESTP. And the person has a more conventional or meticulous style. Meticulous meaning wanting everything to line up and to be just right. This person actually has a wide range of skills and capacity, because all of the different regions are connected in some way, but they're connected in a very even way. So the person will view themselves as being diverse and flexible, but from the outside, actually, their thinking is very linear, and they very poor extroverted intuiting. That's what I would say is the behavioral hallmark of the type. So the person has to be sort of led through explanations and so on, not to somebody who's very quick on the uptake. Then we have the last one on the left is the diagonals, because they triangles. Megan has a triangle, but it faces not like this way or this way. It's more like this way, but it's a triangle. And
there's a different emphasis on where it's pointing?
It's a little bit different, but the skills ultimately seem to be the practical skills seem to be the same. It's just different ways of getting to the same end result. Mm-hmm. So one could be focusing on facial expressions and social feedback and combining that with attention to voice tone. Mm. Another one is paying attention to voice tone and then using your imagination to visualize what's going on with the person. Mm. And then usually there's a third piece, which is analytical in nature or about communicating or both. So there are different ways to do it in the brain, but essentially the person is developing what I call like the therapist or diplomat skills. And I would say that's, you show that pattern. You show the patterns that are on the far left and the far right. You sort of show both of those. Mm-hmm. But there are other ENFJs, like my mom shows an even field, and she's a biochemist. I doubt her brain looked that way when she was your age. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then there are other ENFJs who are quite extroverted, in more like a leadership position, and they can have that very front bias that's there.
That kind of can explain in general. I feel like I relate to like INFJs more than ESFJs, just like in the wild meeting people. Like I always feel like just too introverted or not introverted, like too NI, like for like ESFJs, even though I very much resonate with being an extrovert. So.
Yeah, and I think that's important to remember that the way I view the brain is like our toolbox or orchestra, and that we develop the tools or use the instruments that support our type. And their type is not just a neuroscience thing. Type is actually a deep psychological complex, as Victor describes. And I would say it's important, though, to understand that these patterns do seem to be strongly influenced by profession, by age, and by sex. With sex being something that's apparent in the youngest group, like 15 to 25 years, and then career becoming the most important factor for another 30 or so years. And then ultimately, other elements, age also comes into play. In the long run, like after 55. So those are but these, if I think about the level of 4, then these are the 4. And I would say that, creative is the far right. Then moving leftward, we have dominant. Then there's what is it called, normalizing. And then the last one, I don't really know what to call that. I would say that person has good listening and facilitation skills. As opposed to being pushy.
Harmonizing.
Front bias the pusher. So the one on the far left is not a pusher.
I correlated that to harmonizing in Victor's system.
Yeah.
That's actually the 4th type. So it lines up really nicely, even insofar as function accentuation, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
A little post.
Do your magic.
Дарья говорит, что сейчас